Hey class, I just saw you guys in our classroom a little while ago, but I'm going to go ahead and re-record the information for the Tuesday asynchronous day because I changed the PowerPoint a little bit. So um, please watch the video. I'm going to talk through these strategies. It's a shorter PowerPoint than it had been previously, so this video really isn't going to be very long. So let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll get started. You're going to see me looking this way because that's where I've got the PowerPoint showing. So let me share my screen. Okay, here we go. All right, let me go minimize that. And so what I have here is just basically a PowerPoint talking about the strategies, but I at least want to kind of explain it in my own words. I feel like it's a little more effective than just y'all having to read through this PowerPoint and digest it on your own. Let me go ahead and do the presentation version. There we go. Got it. All right. Okay, so before learning strategies, the first strategy I'm going to talk to you about is creating story impressions. Now, before learning strategies, and we've kind of already talked about this, this is a way to get kids engaged with the topic you're teaching before they actually read a new text or watch an instructional video. They're activating that background knowledge. They're using their schema. They're using their experiences to help them learn better. So one way to do that is with story impressions. And this might be a really good strategy to use with based on whatever it is you're teaching. This might work and it might not. If this does work, then I want you to take a note of it because that can be something that you can write about when you're completing your before learning strategies grid, which will be due on Thursday. So for a story impression, basically students create a story or a paragraph based on clue words given to students. So the idea is not for students to exactly identify how each of the clue words will be used in what they're going to read or what they're going to watch, but to compare their story to what the author has written and how they use the language. The activity pulls students into their reading before they actually engage with the new text and new learning. And this is just a short example of what it might look like. So here's a story impression example using vocabulary for in a biology class, obviously. So here's the important terms. You give them the terms, but then the students create the paragraph, the student sample. So this is just one example of how it might work with students. It doesn't have to be the vocabulary terms you're using. You might want to use vocabulary or let's say terminology that they're going to encounter when they learn the new stuff. It could be words that they learned in previous lessons or words that you might think they have a little bit of a background understanding of. So that's an example of story impressions. This is very, very student led. So think of it that way. All the teacher is doing is providing the words. Students are the ones creating the story. This involves plenty of writing. So if you want your kids writing more, this is a good way to get them doing more writing, using the vocabulary that is appropriate for your content area. So story impressions. The next one is anticipation guides. Now, this is really a versatile strategy. And we actually had a practiced with one way back first or second week of class. It's a brief set of questions, 3 to 5, that help kids activate prior knowledge and any misconceptions of what they maybe perceive as being related. Basically, some students have misunderstandings about topics they're going to learn more about, and this would be a great way to have students think about what they thought was true after they learn and how it's reshaped their understanding. Helps them make predictions, engage important issues that'll surface in the readings and enter with new thinking. So anticipation guides can be created in a variety of ways. So here's one way you might use an anticipation guide in an elementary setting, maybe in a setting where students need more foundational ways of let's say responding to a statement. These are statements. Is it true? Is it false? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Yes, no, just really binary responses to statements related to what they're going to be learning. This is more appropriate for what you might see in a middle school or a high school. Before I read or before I learn, here are my agree, disagree to each of these four statements. And then after I read, I'm going to revisit those ideas and see if my understandings have changed. This is a nice one to use because it's super short, super easy to use. And I would say that really kind of will engage students, not so much in writing, but in a discussion. So you do want to have a discussion with students about what did you think before we read? How has your understanding changed? So it's much more discussion, much less writing, even though they are marking a yes or a no or an agree, disagree. Um, but at the same time, for your chart, understand that it's really very student led. I mean, the teacher's going to come up with the statements, students are thinking, they're responding. They're discussing, talking about misconceptions, talking about what they thought was true, but turned out not to be true, things like that. Clustering. Clustering, it's a fancy way of saying webbing. We see this kind of activity done in classes all the time. It can be used with vocabulary too. But in this case, we're thinking about having kids brainstorm and think about what they already know about a topic. So it's an aid for students it's for nonlinear brainstorming processes like free association. Clustering is simply a kind of brainstorming that links ideas in a two-dimensional map. Similar to mind mapping, except the latter activity is more extensive representation of the ideas they've completed after they've or before they've read. What I want you to think about this is a lot of times we see this sort of strategy used in English classes for writing, but it doesn't have to be. It could be really targeting some issue, some topic that you're going to be introducing or perhaps building on in the classroom. Great way to activate background knowledge. Character quotes helps acquaint students with characters from a narrative text or actual figures from life of somebody you're studying about in an expository text. Expository meaning informational text. Here you're going to give statements or quotes that from a famous character. This could be something you could integrate into an English class, of course, but also history, perhaps art and music. If you're learning about some famous individual related to what you're learning, this is a good way to engage kids in thinking about that person from history or from fictional text if you're doing this in an English classroom. And so you're going to ask questions about those quotes for students to respond to. This is going to get them writing. This is a much more of a writing strategy. Who is talking to you? What can you tell about this person? What are some words that might describe this person based on the quotes? So you're having them think about the person as a whole based on what they've said. Here are some examples. Again, students might study a list of quotes and generate their impressions of the quotes. Working individually or in small groups, they consider the impressions they have gained through reading quotes from that particular character. And then they present their list to the class and you have a discussion. So it's both discussion and writing, but at the same time, it is again student driven. So this is another example of one where students are doing a lot of the brain work. When you think about, is it student-led, teacher-led? Think about who's doing the brain work. Kids are doing the brain work. And in a lot of these before learning strategies, that's what you want. You want kids thinking. Pre-reading plan, prep. This is a really good one. The steps are basic. Initial associations about a concept. So first thing you're going to do with students when you start the class is you're going to brainstorm. You could use mind mapping. You could use anticipation guides. You're going to have them brainstorm in some way about what you're going to be teaching. Then they're going to reflect on their initial associations. Students discuss how each concept in their brainstorming map relate to the concept. Honestly, webbing and clustering is a really great one to use with prep. And then they reformulate the knowledge. Teacher asks the class if they need to add or change any information after they've engaged with the new text. And so it's kind of like mind mapping, brainstorming, clustering. The difference is it's much more I'd say organized. The teacher's leading it a little bit more, and you're really focusing on the new learning that takes place at the end. It's still considered a before learning strategy because of that activating of the background knowledge and the brainstorming, but it's more, I think, systematic when we pull it into the prep, the pre-reading plan strategy itself. So very similar to clustering, it's just more involved. Request. Okay, here's another fun strategy. It's a form of reciprocal teaching, and we're going to learn more about that next week. But it's a form of reciprocal teaching where students assist each other in learning new information. So here are the steps for a request. Request is fun. Students and the teacher silently read a portion of the text, and the teacher closes the book. And the students get to quiz the teacher. I actually sometimes refer to this as stump the teacher because the kids, if they know that we're going to be doing a request and they are going to ask the teacher questions, they're probably going to be more engaged with reading the text because they want to stump the teacher, right? So the first thing is students ask the teacher questions. The teacher's got the book closed. Then they read some more, but this time close the book and the teacher asks the students questions. So it's taking turns, but at the same time, it's really helping kids engage with the text in a way that's a little bit more interactive. So it is still a form of before learning strategy because this is kind of like their preview of the text. They're going to engage ourselves with it and ask questions. And so this one's fun. If I knew about it when I was teaching middle school, I would have used this with my students all the time. But that is it. We don't have a lot of before learning strategies to really consider, which is kind of fun. I actually eliminated some of the strategies that are in the textbook because I felt like students really weren't as interested in them as they are these. So let me go ahead and trying to close share. Okay, that's fine. Oh, you're going to see the screen for a little while still, but that's fine. So what I want you to do, if you need to look at the PowerPoint again and kind of take notes after I've kind of talked to you about them, that's fine. But I do want you guys to take that before learning strategy grid, choose 3 strategies that you think would apply to what you are going to be teaching. Which 3 would lend themselves the best for art, for mathematics, for biology, and so forth. Then fill a chart out across all the columns. Short summary in your own words of what that strategy is. Is it student-led or teacher-led? Is it discussion? Is it writing? And it might be all of those things, but chances are, kind of really think about it. Which one of these are more teacher-led? I'll tell you what, I think the request one is really the only one that's more teacher-led because of the fact that they've got to answer the questions and then they get to quiz the kids. It's a little bit of both if you think about it. But at the same time, that is what your assignment's going to be before we meet again on Thursday. So choose 3 strategies, fill the chart out across all the columns for those 3, submit it to Canvas. The site to submit it to should be available for you there in the week 5 module. Thank you guys. Do your best. And on Thursday, we'll meet on Zoom. Talk to you guys later.